Hello everybody, this is Loki or WayOfLoci and welcome to the No Hit Podcast. Here is my job to interview extraordinary gamers in the realms of challenge running, whether that be no hit runs, completing games in their entirety without taking a single hit or point of damage, speed runs, completing games that would normally take hours and mere minutes, and other such ventures. Today's guest is ThatCoolBlackDude, that's ThatCoolBlackDude on YouTube and Twitch, and CBD_TTV on Twitter. CBD is an expert no-hit runner of the Dark Souls series, in particular with a particular niche towards low damage runs, being particularly well known for completing the game's no-hit using the broken straight sword, being one of, if not the most, least damaging weapons in the entire game, and having taken that forward to complete all three games with that weapon no-hit, as well as Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 3, completing all bosses no-hit with that added difficulty, as well as also completed DS3 all bosses plus DLC Deathless, whilst sharing the controller, so two players playing on one controller, Deathless, with another challenge runner. In this conversation, we go through the added difficulties to bosses and routing when doing low damage runs, being a faceless streamer on Twitch, meaning streaming without a webcam, the differences in the niche runs that CBD has completed, including no upgrades, soul level 1, and what weapon level 0 is, as well as CBD's thoughts on streaming, his introduction of Dead by Daylight into his streams, and other such topics. I hope you enjoy this conversation with ThatCoolBlackDude. All right, CBD, appreciate taking the time. Welcome to the podcast. How's it going, man?
Going all right. How are you?
I am doing very well. I wanted to start, just before we delve into challenge running, I saw, as I was doing some prep for this, talk a lot about cinema goer, movie enjoyer, and was interested in if you had any recommendations or what you think of as a good movie.
The movies that I'm into, it spans a lot of genres. If it's a good movie, I'm probably gonna like it. Or I guess there's kind of a opinion based thing of what constitutes a good movie. But I like all kinds of movies. I actually have a letterbox. It's kind of like it's a social media for film nerds, and you can see like all the movies that I watch there. I write reviews for pretty much everything that I watch. I have lists on there of like my favorite movies that come out every year, the whole nine yards. So I guess to come back to your question, I guess a good movie that I think not a lot of people have seen is my favorite movie of all time. It's called The Way Back. Came out in 2013.
What's that about? Sorry.
It's a coming of age movie. It's rough to actually sell it because every time I say a synopsis, people kind of like, oh, okay, I'll watch it, and they never do. But it's a coming of age movie. It's about just an awkward kid who kind of finds himself when he's at the summer house of his stepdad, and you kind of see him grow and like make friends with the people who are native to the town. And I don't know, it connected with me. It connected with the 10th grade or ninth grade me when I watched it in theaters. So I don't know, it kind of stuck with me all the time. Every person who I showed it to loved it. So that's all I can say about it.
And just to give a recommendation from my part, so there's something else. So one of my favorites is Gladiator, which I think a lot of people have watched, but is up
Oh
there
yeah.
for me, and I'd highly recommend if you haven't seen it. It's a classic, I believe, at this point. I think it's been like 20 years or so, which is sort of scary.
Yeah, it came out in 2000 or 2001 or something.
I'd highly recommend that. It's a fun one and some of the best music I've heard in some films.
Oh yeah, I agree with that.
So moving on to challenge running, what was your first introduction or introduction that led to involvement into either Hitless, if that was the first thing, or challenge running in general?
With me, I think, as with a lot of people who were playing Dark Souls back in like 2013, 2014, my introduction was watching Lobos on YouTube, and I was kind of amazed how he was taking, I don't know, these simple challenge runs as we would think of it today, but it was pretty interesting back then. Like he would be doing like miracles only playthroughs, or sorcery only, or straight sword hilt only, and we'll get back to that. So he encouraged me to like kind of do challenge runs in my own time when I first got Dark Souls back in 2013. Like I did my first sorcery only playthrough, and then I got into streaming I think in 2018 in May, and I did my first soul level 1 run when I first started streaming, and I think that was highly influenced by Lobos. And then I had a few influences kind of along the way, if you want me to go into that too, and how my focus changed as it pertains to souls.
That'd be good, yeah.
So first there was Lobos, and then I discovered that people stream Dark Souls on Twitch too, and not just upload videos to YouTube. And I came across permadeath or deathless runners. Two in specific. Their names are Miltrovid or Milt and Latovsky or Lido, and they would do these challenges that was NG to NG plus 6 permadeath, and after at each NG, they would ask someone in chat to choose a weapon for them, right? So that really caught my attention, and that's what I started to do with my stream. I wanted to do NG to NG plus 7 or NG plus 6 no death runs, and then along came a small little streamer by the Happy Hob, kind of blew up the space in terms of Dark Souls challenge runs back in 2015, and I was watching him when he was going for the first one, the first CS1 no hit run, and I remember the day that he got it. It was, I remember like the title and everything. He numbered his streams. It was stream number 300. Title was something like, "Oh, we're gonna PB today," and
Well, he was right.
and man, oh man, yeah, did he PB? So it was it was quite the experience, and I remember watching that and like trying my own runs later, not no hit, just other challenge runs. I thought I would never really get into no hit runs at all, because I thought that was just not the thing for me. It seemed like I wasn't good enough. But then somewhere along the line, I kind of thought to myself when I was a 1, 2, 3 via Randy, I was like, I kind of want to do something special. I want to get a run that if someone were to see it online or like be told about it, I want them to hesitate and be like, no, that's fake, right? Like there's no way someone actually did that. So I kind of merged two things together. It was I mentioned Lobos earlier. He uploaded a video years ago, I think like 8 years ago by now. It was a straight sword hilt challenge run, just a playthrough of the game, and I was like, I want to merge that with what I saw Happy Hob doing. So I started doing that back in, I think I started like the very first stream was in like July of 2018 or something, and then I got the run 11 months later.
Okay.
So it was a long journey, but that's how I came to it. It was straight sword hill only, no hit of Dark Souls Remastered. So
There's a lot we can go down into that run in particular, but I just want to stay just a quick sec on the previous challenge runs. Did you have any particular favorites in terms of the previous ones you did before Hitless?
well, I only really focus on like the Deathless stuff. I didn't go for any other real challenges. I did enjoy the challenge of just using really really bad weapons, because a lot of times when you'd ask a viewer like, hey, like just choose a weapon for me, I had to have a list of all the available weapons that I could use. Like a lot of times it'd be like the whip, or I don't know, a dagger, or a mail breaker, or something really dumb and really stupid, but or something even like ridiculous as to like a really heavy strength weapon. So you'd have to get like a whole bunch of strength, but then you'd be fat rolling because of just one weapon, right? Before gargoyles. So it was a way to really change your gameplay and understand exactly what your limitations are. And honestly, I never got to NG plus 7. I think the highest I got was NG plus 3 or something. But it was really fun. It really changes your mind whenever you do something outside your comfort zone, and use weapons that you've never used before, and you really understand what they can do and what you should do and what your route should be when you maybe want to play it casually, or do a challenge run specifically with that weapon.
Going into the broken straight sword back then, so nowadays there is a whole host of strats and guides and knowledgeable runners to learn from and be able to get advice from. Back then, when you were starting this run for the first time, how did you approach it?
Well, I was on console for quite a long time, and when I got my first run, it was all on console. So I didn't practice at all. um, I just jumped straight into it. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna figure this out as I go along. I don't care how long it takes me to figure things out, but I'm just gonna I'm gonna count all my hits on this very first attempt, and we'll see where it goes from there. I think at the end of that first run, I had something like 600 hits and some change. 300 of those were to ONS, and ONS took me 3 days to get by. So it was a wake up call, and I realized at that moment that I wasn't sure if I was ever going to get it. So I never really focused on practicing, because I just wanted to do complete runs, and I wanted to see my PB go down. And there were times where I didn't PB for, I don't know, a month or two over those 11 months, and it didn't really phase me. I just wanted to do full runs all the time and see where it took me. That might be the reason why it took me so long, but yeah, it was just the good old fashioned way of no save states, just play
Just grind it out.
or reset. Yep, pretty much.
And was it the idea of wanting to have this memorable run, so to speak, completed, was the one that kept you going for for so long, or kept with it.
Yeah, you could say that. I guess you could also say that I was also just doing it for myself because I even when I got the run, I didn't really try to get on Team Hitless for like another 6 months or something. I got it and I was just happy with myself. I guess it was just me trying to really understand the game a whole lot more and to prove something to myself that I could do something that at one point I thought might have been impossible at the time because no one else was doing what I was doing back in 2018, early 2019. It because if you looked at anyone else's no hit run, they were, it was Black Knight Halberd, Crystal Halberd. They were using the bow, they were using fire bombs, they're using all this stuff. I didn't use any of that. It was just a straight sword hilt. So I think it was just I wanted to prove something to myself. I wanted to give someone a reason to doubt the legitimacy of my accomplishment because I think if you're ever accused of faking something and you didn't actually fake it, then I think that might be the best compliment of all time. Like it's so good, it's unbelievable. I think that really drove me forward to try to finish the run.
That's just reminded me, I believe, like it's very similar to a tweet I read of yours recently, and rephrase if I get this incorrect, but something to do with someone commented that they thought you were view-botting, which was a big compliment, I believe.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's you hit the nail on the head. They thought I was view botting, and they really meant that as an insult and to try to rile me up because I was doing a co-stream with Vswed, another challenge runner, and I was like, oh wow, well thanks. Yeah, I have a lot of people watching me. I appreciate it. That was awesome. It's validating.
I know, we'll go into like live, like the aspects of live streaming later on, but it's weird that's, yeah, as you say, people just come in and go. I'm just gonna do something negative in today, just in the brief introduction I'm gonna have with each other, and but anyway, never mind. It's a strange thing with live streaming. And I guess with social
Mhm.
content creation overall, like the same thing could be done
Oh
with
yeah.
like YouTube comments and stuff like that. Was so in going into the DS1 run, the first one, the 90%, what were some parts that ended up maybe being unexpectedly difficult? And to just to go further on that, I should say, is in certain cases, there'll be the difficulty of a boss will take much longer, for instance. That will just be a patience test because you're going to be doing a lot less damage than, as you say, with Black Knight Halberd or
Mhm.
the Crystal Halberd. But was there any cases where the limited damage had a more difficult effect than just extending a fight, either in routing or for particular bosses?
I think for that any percent run, it was the timing. It was the time limit that I had on myself because with the straight sword hilt, even if you have the most overpowered infusion or upgrade on it, I think the most you're ever going to do with one swing might be 35 damage, and that's if you farm for a lot of Titanite things and you spend a lot of time going that route. But you don't do that on no hit runs, so I didn't upgrade it whatsoever. So a lot of my damage came from buffs, magic buffs, or power within too, which is and a lot of people don't know this with Dark Souls 1 with weapon buffs. They're not increased by red tear stone ring, so I had to go out of my way, get power within, and then power within lasts for 100 seconds, and once it runs out, it runs out. And once I run out of my buffs, that's it. Either have to homeward bone or I have to do 2 damage a swing. So that was a huge thing, not only just with the fights themselves. Like I think Sif was a big one with if I ever didn't finish the fight in however long the magic weapon buffs last for, then that was pretty much it. I either had to bone out or I had to try to buff in the fight, and that's pretty much a death sentence because Sif input reads, right? So and it affected my routing a lot too. Like if anyone was there for like the first time I ever fought Gwen is a long fight when you're not doing a whole bunch of damage per swing. So I had to do a lot of risky things, and it was pretty much RNG until I routed in more damage via power within. So it was both difficult for trying to do the fights perfectly and quickly, as well as trying to find ways of routing in other things to like give myself some leeway or allow some boss fights to not be left up to RNG.
A notable one that I saw when I was doing bit prep was Pinwheel, who is mostly known in both
Mm,
vanilla and
yeah.
in a standard no hit run, so to speak, quotations, as being a very easy boss. But for something like this, it's imagined very difficult.
Yeah, very difficult because typically people don't fight Pinwheel until, well, they get really overpowered. And I was fighting Pinwheel second boss after Asylum Demon, and you don't realize the pure frustration that he can cause when you're just two shotting him. As when I'm fighting him with no range and only a straight sword hilt with gold pine resin, and that was another one too. I needed to kill him within 60 seconds because I needed the other gold pine resins that I got, because you only get 3 at the very beginning, and it had to be perfect pretty much all the time because he has clones. He can summon more clones if you don't kill him right away in his second phase. Yes, he has a second phase. He summons 10 clones, and it gets horrible. So Pinwheel was it kind of was a surprise now you mention it for me, because it was a challenge that no one else really had to go through when going through DS1 with Hitless strats. It was, again, I was kind of the first like canary in the coal mine with that experience.
God, I've not heard that phrase in ages.
Oh, canary in the coal mine.
Yeah. Why Pinwheel second, Alan Trust?
Sorry.
Why Pinwheel as the second boss after Asylum
Oh,
Demon?
Pinwheel as the second boss was because I needed to get a skull lantern to get the Ring of Fog, and I needed the Ring of Fog so that I could go down into Lower Undead Burg and not attract all the dogs down there. And I need to go to Lower Undead Burg to get to free Griggs to get magic weapon. And there was a lot of you need this, so you need that, so you need that. Kind of the traditional hero's quest.
Yeah.
Like it was, like I said, the routing was pretty messy, and it was pretty unprecedented in terms of routing.
You mentioned range difficulty, and one of the first ones that comes to mind is like something like Calamite, who even with just normal weapons, I remember struggling. Was there anything, or was he a particular case? I know he has a lot of health, so I imagine that was a factor as well. But was there any cases where the reduction of range of the weapon impacted it quite a bit as well?
Yeah, Calamite is the most difficult boss in the all bosses version of that run, just because the range so much isn't too much of the issue with Calamite. It's just being in the fight for so long, and again, you have buffs, so it's going to be a very, very, very difficult challenge to not only just kill him with the straight sword hilt, but to not run out of your buffs, right? And even with buffs, you're not going to be doing that much damage. And you have to find spots in the run, or spots in the fight, openings, I should say, to buff. And buffing takes a while. And if you buff too early, or if you buff too late, then you're probably going to get hit, and he's going to input redo, or something along the lines of that, right? So Calamite brought a whole lot more challenge to that. Not to mention that he doesn't have the best hitboxes either. So that was a huge hurdle. The DLC in general, actually, in that run is a huge hurdle, because they had so much help, and even if you did have a whole bunch of buffs, you needed clear openings to actually do any damage to them, or else you're just going to be sitting there doing 2 hits or 2 damage per hit, and that would probably take hours. So
Because of the reduced damage, of course, these runs take a lot longer, and each boss takes a lot longer in general. Is there a way or that you kept focused in the fights or during the runs, and to give a bit of like info for people listening? So I believe the any percent was around 3 hours, and the all bosses in DS1 5, I believe.
yeah, I think it was 3.5 and 5.5, or maybe it was 3.5 and 5, somewhere along the lines. To say focus, oh man, you just kind of get into a rhythm. I feel when you're fighting a boss for so long. Like sometimes, like for example, Asylum Demon during those runs takes about 10 minutes. But Artorias and Calamite and Manus can also take around that much time if you don't get openings to buff. If you I don't know, miscalculate, and you're not punishing everything, you kind of get into a trance, or at least I kind of got into a trance whenever I was on a run and I was fighting these long bosses. I guess it also helped. I think when I started going for the all bosses run, I started playing smooth jazz on my stream. I guess that kind of kept my nerves down sometimes, but it was definitely something else. Just you kind of block out everything. You block out chat. You block out your other thoughts. You're just focusing on the boss. And I think my experience with doing low damage runs, that's just how it is. You just have to get into the rhythm, because if you don't, then you're gonna be focusing on other things. I think heard Dino say one time, like if you're not focused, you start thinking about your thinking when you're fighting the boss, and you start thinking about, oh, what if you mess up? And once you start doing that, you're not focused. So it's discipline.
And did that just mainly come from repetition, or just having a really good understanding of the boss, or combo of two, or other?
I'm not sure where that really came from. I guess it comes from the understanding that you're doing something difficult, so you have to devote a lot of attention and your willpower to stay focused. Because and I guess it also comes from the failures that you have, because there would be a lot of times where you lose a run, and it's simply because you're not focused, and you learn from it, and you realize that you shouldn't take your mind off of the fight, because you have so many examples as to what happens when you don't focus and you think about something else.
A couple of the runs separate from Straight Sword Hills, in DS1 at least, that you've completed are SL1 No Upgrades and SL1 Weapon Level 0. Could you explain first the difference between those two runs, and then the difficulties that are included in those as opposed to something like Straight Sword Hilt?
So the difference between no upgrades and weapon level 0 is no upgrades just means plus 0. If there's not a plus 1 or plus anything next to a weapon, that is not an upgrade. Weapon level 0 is actually a PvP term. So like usually if you're wielding like a Black Knight weapon or anything that is upgraded with something that isn't regular Titanite, then the least it could ever be is a weapon level 5. So if you have like the Black Knight halberd or something, so that's weapon level 5, you can't use it on weapon level 0. So that's kind of the difference. So the difference also is you have less of a range of weapons and less of a range of tools with weapon level 0, as opposed to soul or no upgrades. The challenges that come with both of them that aren't really seen in Straight Sword Hill, no upgrades, there's not too much more of a challenge when it comes to that, as opposed to just soul level 1, because on Straight Sword Hill I wasn't soul level 1. So you have less stamina. That'd be like the biggest thing. But with weapon level 0, soul level 1, you got to find damage, and you got to find damage real quick. The biggest issue would probably be Four Kings when it comes to weapon level 0. And people who watched me when I was getting that run knew that Four Kings was a huge hurdle, because it is a damage per second race. You got to be perfect. At least at the time when I got my run. After I got the run, there was a different strat that was discovered, that made it a lot simpler. But at the time, I was using the best strats that were available to us, and Four Kings was a mess. Like you had to be perfect. If you didn't get good RNG, you had to bone out. You had to come back, and I was there with a dagger and gold pine resin and power within. And every time that I ran out of gold pine resin, I had to go over to the forest, kill more mushrooms for the chance to get gold pine resin, and then go back to fight Four Kings. And I think even if you look at my if you look at the YouTube video, I think the entire Four Kings split is something like an hour or like 30 minutes or something. It's really long. Just me going in there, boning out, going in there, boning out. So that was a huge issue.
In terms of routing for these runs, so no upgrades, SL1s, that's no leveling up, no upgrades, of course. Did that give flexibility in routing? Because you don't really have to prep for many things, so to speak. Obviously, and buffs would have to be found, and in the case you mentioned with Four Kings. But did that give flexibility in the routing?
Yeah, definitely, because you don't have to spend a lot of time trying to get a lot of damage, I'd say, as opposed to Straight Sword Hill, where like the first, I don't know, 40 minutes of that run is just shopping, or maybe even like the first hour is just shopping, and like going around collecting things. You don't really have to do that in no upgrades. In weapon level 0, I kind of did, because that was weird routing too, because I had to like fight Capra Demon in order to unlock the Pyromancer and get Pyromancy for some areas. So that itself was interesting in terms of routing. With no upgrades, there's a lot of flexibility. With weapon level 0, not too much.
Going into, so you completed all these DS1 runs, both the all bosses, any percent, and then these no upgrades runs. How was the experience moving, so from the Sword Hilt to Broken Straight Sword, which is pretty much the same thing, in DS3? How was that as an experience for the new gameplay style, so to speak, even though it's still Dark Souls, but it's just a lot quicker?
Wait, were you asking specifically about Dark Souls 3 or both DS2 and DS3?
DS3 first. How's the experience of going into
Okay.
that as the new game?
It was a humbling experience. Because I had never So going into going for no hit runs on DS3, I had never actually completed the game. I completed the game once, probably a week before I started going for the Broken Straight Sword no hit run on that one. And it was humbling because you were going into, or I was going into something that was fairly difficult, and people often say that DS3 is the most difficult no hit run to get with any percent. And I was jumping into something that was a lot more difficult than spin to win blades, right? So I had to deal with phase twos. I had to deal with lack of range. I couldn't skip a lot of things, and I really enjoyed that because you only get to experience something like that once, really, or some of that to that extent with learning and just something just kicking your butt that much. I don't know. And I think it was really good for other people because a lot of people knew that I was very, very good at, or I was very accomplished at DS1. But going into DS3, and I got a lot of comments like, "Oh wow, like this makes me feel very happy that," or like, "I'm getting some joy out of this, that like you're not automatically good at everything." And I think that's good for people to see because you don't get soul level one, no upgrade zone fusions, all bosses in DS3 overnight. You work towards it, right? And I really enjoyed the grind, and it made me realize that like I'm not just a one game Andy. Like I can do very well with other games because just I stick with whatever I put my mind to, and I eventually got it, and it was amazingly fun.
Just thinking people like he's human after all, kind of thing. It just he's one
Oh
of
yeah,
us.
100%.
Uh, I think that sort of like challenge or that experience is what a lot of people, including myself, are looking forward to for like when Elden Ring comes out. Just that sort of fresh experience of, even though we've played these games before, even though I say that didn't really help going into Sekiro. Just like, oh, I played From Software before, but
Oh
Sekiro
yeah.
still thrashed me. But I think that's a good thing to look forward to with Elden Ring coming out as well.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be. I think it's going to be a whole lot different, at least in the challenge running space, because Hitless has grown like so much within just the past year, and or in the past year and a half. I think the Hitless Discord isn't even 2 years old yet, or maybe it just turned two, one of the two. But it's grown quite a bit. There are several hundred people who are part of Team Hitless, at least on the website, and you're going to have a lot more people who are focused on challenge running, right? And I think the culture of challenge running on Twitch, at least, is going to be unlike what we've seen before going into a From Software game. Because you mentioned Sekiro, and how Sekiro kicked my butt too. Even though I was very involved with From Software, Sekiro was much of a different game as opposed to DS1, 2, and 3, and Elden Ring is very much like DS1, 2, and 3. So it is going to be interesting what will happen, and like what direction challenge running will go, how fast strats will develop, how fast people will get like these amazing runs that the average person might not think to be possible yet. It's fun. It's a fun time of year.
I think one, not to go into any sort of spoilers, but from certain aspects of Saw from the network test from other people, and all bosses run is going to be an interesting thing. If that ever
Oh yeah.
happens, so that'll be interesting. You mentioned having to do phase two in the DS3 run. So particular examples that came to mind for me was like DSA or Deacons were those ones that were tricky, so to speak, even though all of them were tricky, of course. But
Yeah.
yeah, those ones that come to mind for me.
From my recollection, I think, yeah. So mainly DSA was a huge one. It was a big one. I remember watching people do or like try to fight Phase Two DSA when I never even played DS3 before, and I was like, I can never do that. Like, there's too much stuff going on. DSA is way too aggressive. You have meatballs flying in from left and right. Like, there's a lot going on there. Deacons was another one where you can't just spam L1 to get past Phase Two. Aldrich was kind of another one.
Oh yeah.
Where phase two gets very, very tricky with fire trails, and there's probably another one that I'm not really remembering right now. But yeah,
I guess Vought would be another one because we don't really deal with Vought in normal playthrough, and he's a lot more
yeah,
aggressive in second phase.
you don't deal with Vort with phase two, but on Broken Trade Sword, you don't see much of phase two anyway. You can still get the stagger after the charge, and everything's fine. But yeah, it was, I don't know. It's an interesting experience with learning all those because it's a lot thrown at you all at once, and I took a kind of different approach to DS3. Like a lot of other people start with Twin Blades and they go to SL1, they do a whole bunch of other stuff. I just went straight to Broken Straight Sword, and there's a lot of information thrown at you at once, and I think it's a fantastic way to learn by just doing it.
So you'd been with mentioned earlier that for the original Broken Straight Sword or the Straight Sword Hilt run specifically, for DS1 that took 11 months, and then obviously going into the next few runs. Going into DS3, did you go into it straight into Broken Straight Sword because that was like your niche, or so? I guess my question is sort of is how come you didn't go into like just a standard any percent?
Didn't go to a center 100%. I kind of have this wish that I don't want to do a regular meta any percent run, or even like a meta all bosses, because I think I don't know. I feel like I'm kind of unique in that spot, by just not having something like that on my record. I think that since I wanted to do Broken Straight Sword anyway, like I had my eyes on like getting the Dark Souls trilogy of Broken Straight Swords somewhere down the line. So I wanted to just go right into that because I was gonna go for it anyway. So again, I think the best way of learning is to just do what you want to do. Like, don't really take a lot of kind of meaningless steps to it. And I think the mentality that you need to go through easier things to work your way up, it may work well for some people in terms of your mentality, but you are kind of extending the time that's going to take for you to get your end goal, right? So with Broken Tracer, that's the thing that I wanted the most. The fastest way for me to get it was to just do it. And you see that a lot with a lot of people. Like they say, "Oh, like I'm not ready for a no hit run." Like, what do you think would be a stepping stone to get that? And there are good answers to that, saying like, "Oh, you can try Deathless, you can try SL1." But I've always thought like the best thing to do is just do it. Just start a run, count your hits. After you finish one run, do it again. And that's how I did Broken Tracer or DS3. I started a run, I counted all my hits. I I got whooped to cinder probably 300 times. I was on the verge of a mental breakdown, and I did it. I got past cinder after 300 hits or so to him, and it was satisfying. And I just kept on doing it, and I kept on dying to cinder over and over again for the next, I don't know, I think it was 3 months or something, 3 5 months it took me to get that run, and it was great. Like I don't think there's any other joy that's greater than just seeing your improvement. So I guess to go back to your original question, yeah, the any percent's just not for me. Just want to go into more difficult stuff because that's where I'm going to end up anyway. So might as well get started early.
So in terms of that, it's like you're going into specific or mentioning specific or like targeted practice as opposed to learning a prior run, which may be, I guess, adaptive practice because you can move that into a different run. So if you did like any percent, you could move aspects of learning that run into other runs. But for this, you just want to focus all your time and of course, just wanting to do the run, but having all the time focused on targeted on learning how to do this particular run improved your learning time, so to speak. Would that be a reasonable way to say it?
Yeah, yeah. I'd say I learned a whole lot more not doing I guess the simpler runs. Same thing with Trade Sword. You just learn a whole lot more because there's a whole bunch of more information and understanding that comes with doing very difficult things.
Again, a sort of repeated question, but it is a different game. But was the similar difficulty differences for the no upgrades, no infusions for DS3, or was the some specific problems or difficulties in DS3 compared to the Broken Straight Sword?
There there was a lot of differences, and a lot of that had to do with me just not using other weapons other than twin blades in my first run and the broken tracer for my other runs. And I guess a lot of it had to do with just getting used to the tools that you had. Some parts were more fun because I got to use the bandit's knife, which has become my favorite weapon that I've used in DS3. But something like Cinder is very different, and it's very It's very different from Broken Straight Sword because there are a lot of different options that you can do, especially in Dark Souls 3 as it pertains to SL1 upgrades or infusions. Because there's like really aggressive ways to go about fighting some bosses. There's really cautious ways to go about them too, and there's kind of somewhere in the middle. And I think a lot of it has to do a lot of the fun of it and a lot of the stress as well has to do with whether or not you're doing the right thing for your play style, right? And it kind of it that run specifically encouraged me to really think about what I'm doing and if it's the right thing to do with regards to learning bosses and with regards to learning how to fight bosses because I was kind of going off of, 'cause who got the run before me at that point. It was Gino and Sounds Tricky got that run before I started going for it myself. And I did a lot of strats that they were doing with bosses or with areas and I realized that some of those just weren't for me. And I really had to dig deep and find other ways that I could go about doing these fights that were to fit my play style. Right. It was difficult in the sense that, again, you had to learn more about certain things. You had to survive in fights for longer as well because you're doing technically less damage. But it was a great experience because the learning part of it is just unmatched because it's very satisfying once you can get a strat down, once you can execute it a lot, and once you can do it consistently.
And in particular for these low damage runs that you do, imagine you have to learn these bosses to a much greater degree than in a standard 80%, where some bosses can be cheese, some bosses can be you do so much damage you can sort of YOLO to an extent in the sense of hitless YOLO. But as we mentioned, like in the phase twos you've come across, you've had to learn them inside and out.
Yeah, and you mentioned cheeses. That's another thing that I should mention about the no upgrade zone fusions run is some parts were very difficult, some parts were easy. Like you get storyteller staff in Dark Souls 3, like that's half the bosses just thrown out the window.
What weapons? Sorry.
Just storyteller staff or STS. It's a staff in Dark Souls 3. It inflicts poison, but it's a stronger form of poison
Yeah.
that's better than toxic. It's the thing that you see people use with half light all the time. You do that on a lot of the bosses, boom. That's a lot of damage that's being done when you're not even doing anything. So
There's some cool strats. I think another one that I saw, I can't remember which runner it was, but I believe it was Crystal Sage and maybe another boss that's coming to mind, but it was using a frost weapon with a torch in order to do frost damage to Crystal Sage and then using the torch to reset, able to pretty much do that fight very quickly, which and there's as you say with the
yeah.
staff as well, there's like restrictions cause innovation. That's sort of the path I'm going
hmm
down.
yeah. Yes, absolutely.
You also mentioned about playstyle differences and that led to strat differences. Could you give an example of where a strat from a previous run, I say with Tricky or sorry, I can't remember the first one you mentioned.
Gino.
Gino, a strat they did which didn't fit your playstyle and what you changed it to fit more?
The two biggest examples for me was Twin Princes and Demon Princes. With Twin Princes, they did the strat that you just mentioned. It was the Erythal Straight Sword, the Frost Weapon, and the Torch. They would hit twice, reset the proc with the Torch, and keep on doing that way. And Princes, it was that strat was very it could be foiled very, very quickly and very, very easily, I should say. And I was a very aggressive player when it came to runs like this. I realized that that strat was not vibing very well, and then out of the blue, one of my speedrunner friends, Matt Apocalypse, came in. He was like, "Oh, did you ever see how they fight this boss with no rolling?" And I'm like, "No, like why would that ever be applicable here?" And I watched it, and here comes my best friend, the bandit's knife, and I use bleed strats. Instead of dancing around princes and like waiting from the teleport and stuff like that, I did a looping strat with the bandit's knife because the bandit's knife is very quick. you can get a hit in and recover very quickly. So as opposed to hitting twice and then waiting for an opportunity to hit with a torch, I was just hitting once with a bandit's knife and waiting for them to bleed and kind of circling around them. So that if you can envision, like the boss would constantly pivot, but they would never attack, and that's the strat that I went with. And I had dissenters of that strat, mainly my friend Vswed, but because a lot of people thought it was too risky. But no, it fit my playstyle a whole lot better than trying the frost and torch route. And same thing kind of with Demon Princes. That's a long fight, and up until that point, people were using the Black Knight sword to get a lot of damage in on phase one, and I thought that was unnecessary. So again, my trusty friend, the Bandit's Knife. I'm an aggressive player, and with the Bandit's Knife, you have to be fairly aggressive if you want to bleed the enemies. So I avoided picking up the Black Knight sword, and I just went directly into using the Bandit's Knife, and it was really fun because I think a lot of people, when they start doing hitless runs, they might lose sight of, what's fun. And for me, being aggressive is fun, even if it might be more risky to some people. But that was my kind of mindset in switching up the strats. I wanted to be more aggressive. I wanted the fight to be done more quickly, and I wanted to do the fight how I wanted to do it.
So enjoying the like having an aggressive playstyle, did that then help, as you mentioned earlier, with these runs sometimes having to be done perfectly or because of buff limitations? Did that help?
Yeah, well, doing the fights aggressively, it helps a lot with learning. Like you understand more about what you can get away with, and what openings are truly openings and stuff like that. So it helps with future runs or future challenges because again, you just learn a lot more in a short amount of time because you're being aggressive.
Going into the last one, which would be DS2, and I want to start with this one if your approach to learning this run has changed compared to learning the other runs.
So I think hearing that question, I want to say immediately yes, it has changed, but how it changed, I'm not entirely sure. I think the biggest thing with Dark Souls 2 was learning like what's completely necessary with like something simple as movement in these runs or in these games because with Dark Souls 2, rangeless is almost never a thing. Like not damaging enemies with the bow. The bow is almost ubiquitous in every single Dark Souls 2 run, unless it's like something like sorcery or something. You're almost never going to find no range stuff. Few people have done it, but not many. And that was another thing that really changed my approach because I started really practicing the certain areas in segments. I think that was the first time I ever started doing that. Because the areas in that game are so much more difficult than the bosses, aside from Throne Duo. And there's a lot of things that can go wrong. And there's a lot of things that have to be perfect. Because with Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 3 more so, you don't have to be as purposeful with your actions. Dark Souls 3 is more forgiving with, with rolling, with attack animations. You can roll out of attack animations very like much more quickly than in Dark Souls 2. With Dark Souls 2, everything had to be planned, and you had to go according to plan, and you had to know what can go wrong, and you had to know what to do when something goes wrong. And a lot of times when I talk about this stuff and like knowing what to do when stuff goes wrong, I point to Shrine of Amana because if you've ever played Dark Souls 2, you know Shrine of Amana is just horrible. It doesn't matter if you're on a no-hit run or just a casual run and you're playing it for the first time. It's it's bad, and to do that with no bow, no consumables, no like a shortened weapon that doesn't do as much damage as other things. Like it changed my approach because I knew that I needed to practice these things, and I need to be more patient when the time called for it. I should say because I did like still being aggressive, but sometimes it calls for patience as well. And if if you look at my DS2 run, you'll see I don't think anything gets more patient than having a half an hour thrown to a fight where you're just focused, or where I was just focused. It was definitely an experience that helped me as a runner, I feel.
So for that particular example of Shrine of Armana, how did you end up approaching that with um, only do melee only?
It was I mean it was doing the same thing over and over again. You know, you make a save state, you load in, you practice this one section. I practiced going by two enemies probably 200 times, maybe even more, just because I needed to really see what the best option was of dealing with them, right? And it was just repetition, 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 knowing what they can do, what I should do, what I should do if one moves right, one moves left, one attacks earlier than the other, you know, and it can get very frustrating because the the less you know about a game, the more you think things are influenced by RNG, right? And when you're practicing or when you're doing a no hit run, you get very frustrated because you think that a lot of bad things that happen to you are caused by RNG, and that may be true, but you know that you can respond to RNG very, very well, and you can manipulate it in a lot of cases, not all. And that little spot in doing that run was again very humbling because I knew I needed to practice, and it just wasn't going to come to me very easily like my I don't know like or it wasn't going to just randomly show up like my straight sword hilt run did. Right. I needed to practice that if I wanted to really, really get better and really be consistent if I ever wanted to do the Broken Sword trilogy. Right. So yeah, it was a lot of practice and a lot of and a lot of studying too is another thing that really helps with these runs. Like seeing what other people do in situations like that can really help guide you in the right direction or give you a different perspective on things.
Just going about the RNG aspects, with it's I think it's a really important thing. Improving your knowledge of the game or working out why something's happened instead of immediately putting it as RNG, which is why looking back at runs or looking at the VOD or clips of a previous hit and looking at why step A led to B led to getting hits, because then once you know how it works or have a better understanding of why it may have happened, you can then adjust, you can practice, you can work out how things happen. So, yes. Because I was speaking to Dino about this, like in terms of like RNG and luck. If you've got a better understanding of like the RNGs, like good and bad RNGs, you can still sort of work with them. So, an example would be like in Soul of Cinder, if he does the soul mass, homing soul mass, and then does a
Hmm.
phase transition. That's bad RNG, but you can, because you've had experience or practiced it, you can have stuff you can deal with it. You know to bone out, or you know which parts you can do it, or you can stagger him early. To prevent that from happening, and that's all from knowledge of the game, not just basing it on RNG first.
Yeah. You kind of said it very well. A lot of the times, there like RNG is going to be in the game. I'm not sure of any particular boss fight where you can absolutely guarantee that something will happen if you do a certain thing or stand in a certain place or whatever. But when you practice a lot more, if you get experience enough to the point where you know what to do when you get bad RNG, or you know what to do when you mess up, and then you open the door for more opportunities or a wider range of RNG whenever you're doing a fight or running through an area or whatever. It it kind of harkens back to the phrase like fortune favors the prepared, and you know luck also favors the prepared, right? So you may think that luck at first is kind of against you when you're preparing for these things, and then you slowly start to see that oh you kind of get more lucky when you have more experience, right? Because you just have that muscle memory. You have that knowledge of where to stand, or like maybe you forget why you run a certain route or stand a certain place, and then something happens. Like okay, that's why I do that. You know, it may seem like it's luck, but it's actually just experience.
Which I think, from personal experience, I find really difficult when making guides because it's so hard to put into a single video or written piece all the nuances
Yeah, true.
that you may not see in a single run. So, like, a common guide type that I've done is like the completed run and then do a voiceover. but it's one run, one example, and there's so many nuances that have happened in the tens to hundreds of runs you've done prior, or why you like, as you say, like stand in a certain position. I think an example of that would be, I've not learned this particular strat, but in Bloodborne there's a boss, Bloodstar Beast, where people do a similar to a Lauren Schools, with something called pungent cocktails, where they draw the boss's attention to something. And I've learned or spoken to people who know about that strat that it's quite precise in how that's done, which is very difficult to explain in a single guide in terms of, unless you go into like a 10-minute, 20-minute in depth positioning guide.
Yeah, it's very difficult to convey different situations and bosses, and that's why you know probably the most comprehensive guide on Cinder is about 50 minutes,
That's
right?
geocentrics, I believe. Yeah,
Yeah, Geocentric, his guide on
yeah,
Cinder.
it's in depth.
It's 50 minutes, and it is jam packed of
It's everything.
possibly everything you need to know about the fight.
Yeah, I've seen a few of his, very obviously well done, and one on Dancer, I believe, which was similar, shorter length, of course, because Dancer's a little less complex than Cinder, but 30 minutes or so, I think. All just everything you need to know. Before going to live streaming or aspects of live streaming, just a quick query that I didn't have chance to look up on prior to starting is, I saw in a comment on your original run, commented about a PowerBazingha, who I found was a very large YouTube creator, but didn't find reference
Yeah.
to what your comment alluded to. So I just wanted to uh, ask about it.
Power Bazinga, I don't watch him personally, or I hadn't even heard about him before I did my run. But he's a Spanish YouTuber, and when I got my run, I I kind of took a break from Twitch and everything to focus on school, but I started getting these YouTube comments popping up on that video, and uh, they a lot of them were in Spanish, and a lot of them were saying like, "Oh, Power Bazinga brought me here," and I realized that he did a video about my run, and up until that point, I was kind of a no one on Twitch and YouTube, and him doing a video on my run was very neat and very cool because it got my video a lot more exposure, but it was also kind of validating. I was like, oh well, like a lot more people know that stuff like this exists. You know, like they're more exposed to either no hit runs or things that you can do better with or more difficult with no hit runs, right? But yeah, man, I haven't heard the name Power Bazing in a while, so that
No
kind of
worries.
brought back memories. Like I was like, oh wow, that's very nice.
So going into live streaming, mentioned the start of it, but what's been the appeal of live streaming, perhaps aside from the appeal of challenge running itself, that's kept you with it since, as you mentioned, July 2018, I believe it was, or at least my hastily written note is.
Um, it, so well, I started no hits in July 2018. I think I started my first stream in like 31st of May 2018. And what I guess what kept me going was challenge runs are a huge aspect of it, but it's also the community that you are a part of too. You get to meet a lot of people, either whether it be viewers, chatters, other streamers. I don't know, a whole bunch of people who just really they they really help you have fun. I guess you know. It wouldn't be much fun if I was the only person doing something like this. I feel you know, and you make some very honestly weird connections with people that you wouldn't have ever thought that you'd make before getting in to this kind of space. You get to see the creativity of a lot of people too, right? And I don't know. I think a huge thing about live streaming and like how I really find or continue to find enjoyment in it is I get to do this while you know people kind of believe in me and support me and whether it be you know moral support or anything like that. It's just very validating that you get to be around people who appreciate the same things that you do in terms of gaming or souls or challenges.
So you're a what's what's known as sort of off the cuff, as a faceless streamer, you don't have a webcam, and I believe you have
Yeah.
never publicly shown your face, as far as I'm aware. Is there a reason behind preference or
It's kind of a weird one because when I first started streaming, I was going directly through my PlayStation 4 right here. It was a very bare bones stream because I didn't have a capture card, so I just did the live stream feature through the console. And obviously, I think you could have a webcam if you use that, but I didn't, and I didn't want to pay any more money to really have that. So I was like, yeah, I'll just I don't know, just not have a webcam. And then I got a capture card eventually after like I don't know a few months, and I didn't really have a very sophisticated PC. I just had a laptop. I had a MacBook Pro that I ran Windows on, and so that I can access Streamlabs, OBS, and I didn't think that like getting a cam would be good because I didn't think that my computer would like handle so many things being attached to it. So I was like, whatever, maybe down the line. And then, and again, this is all when I don't know, I maybe had like 5 average people watching me, so not the audience that I have now. And then, again, when I kind of came back from my 6 month ish break from streaming, it just kind of turned into something that I don't know. I didn't think that I needed it. I didn't think that the people who were watching me cared that much. And it just became a bit of a meme too. Like kind of how Gino was before he showed his face. Like people make funny theories, and it's I don't know. It's pretty hilarious. And I think it also is something special at this point. Like whenever I do decide, if I ever do decide to show my face publicly, I think it'd be a cool time. It's just something to maybe look forward to, and I think it's also validating that people want to watch me because of the things that I do, not necessarily what I look like. you know?
yeah? I think when the occasions that I've seen where people have turned on the webcam or public shown, and I think it's always either wow, you don't look like what I thought, or you don't sound like what I thought. Because I think I saw a
Yes.
comment of like Gino saying, "He looks like Jesus" or something like that.
Yeah, like that's okay. That's a huge thing too. Like the number one thing that I will get if I ever show my face, the number one statement or comment is, "Wow, I didn't think you'd look like that," or "Wow, I thought you'd look differently." I even got that when I met a few of the runners in real life. Like I got that same comment, like, "Wow, I thought you'd look differently." It's like, well, yeah, of course.
Yeah,
you know, of course, everyone
have a
has their own
mental
idea
image
of
of you or insert runner.
yeah, exactly.
uh, Speaking of, I actually saw it, which I believe was in the same time frame. Swed uploaded a video of the two of you doing a Deathless run, or actually specifically a two-person one controller Deathless run. How was that as an experience? Because that sounds
Yeah.
both really fun and coordination sounds interesting.
That was a very interesting experience because I'd never done anything like that before. But when you're going about doing two-player one controller, it was very evident that like we knew what we were doing, and there was kind of of course there's an element of trust, but it's eye-opening in that like a lot of the challenge runs or maybe know it runners, you think the same. You know what's an opening. You know what you can get away with. You know what's safe. You know what's not. And there were a few hurdles to get over at first because first of all, just finding a comfortable way to hold the controller itself is just weird. I think it was like the position that we got in eventually was Swed had his left arm across his body underneath his right arm, and then I had my right arm like just directly like in front of me and to the left. I don't know. If you saw him, it was really weird how he was holding his controller, and I don't know. And like we had to have like proper cushions like to have the controller rest on. It was very strange, but you can kind of see sorry, I'll say this, but you can kind of see towards like if you watch the entire video, like we kind of become more and more used to it because you can even hear like Gale, or when we fought Gale, Swed said like, yeah, that felt exactly like how he would do it if it was just himself, right? So eventually you get in this synergy with the other person. It takes a while to get to that point, but it was a cool experience.
Yeah, I was just going to mention, so Swed was on the left side, so he was controlling movement and twin blade, so imagine the attacking as well. And then yours was the item usage, rolling, and potentially some attacks, depending on weapon, of course.
Oh yeah, I think I stole a boss kill or two from him by doing an R1. So little things like that are pretty fun too, and you don't really get to do that too often because I don't think a lot of people are. I don't think a lot of people are in the position to meet someone who is that interested in something to that point and to like be at similar skill levels to really understand the other person.
One thing I read was you have either introduced or introducing Dead by Daylight as a mainstream thing, so to speak. Just interested. As a bit of background, a lot of like streams are focused on particular niches because that's sort of how Twitch like things and audiences like it. How's the experience of introducing something new to your audience or into your regular streams?
It's fun. I mean, with Dead by Daylight, it's kind of a weird. I think it's an abnormality with Twitch because there's a lot of overlap between the Souls community and Dead by Daylight. Maybe not the other way around, but a lot of people who play Souls really like Dead by Daylight, and it's and I play Dead by Daylight off stream like all the time, so it's very comfortable for me to just go from Dark Souls to DBD, and I don't know, it's been pretty interesting so far. A lot of people aren't as familiar with it, and that's a cool experience to expose them to this kind of game because sometimes I get the comment like, "Oh, I don't know what's going on," but it seems very fun, or like I have no idea what just happened, but that was entertaining. So like that stuff, like hearing stuff like that is really cool, and exposing people to stuff like that is really awesome. And I get to develop my skills as a streamer a lot better too, because up until now I've just been kind of just a soul streamer, and so my streaming style is going to center around streaming while playing Souls. When you introduce another game like DBD, where the there's not the same rhythms as a Souls game. There's not like the same downtime. That there's like you have to get in a different rhythm to to commentate, to respond to things in chat, to read chat, to explain what you're doing, stuff like that. It's a learning experience for me because I kind of realized like, well, just because you're really good at streaming one game does not mean you're going to be very good automatically at streaming in general. It takes time to get used to, and it's very much a muscle and a skill that you have to like constantly work at to get better.
Could you narrow down potentially an aspect of of the stream or a stream difference from when you play in DVD as opposed to a challenge run in a Dark Souls game?
So a huge challenge is DBD is a lot faster, or DBD is a game of seconds a lot. So you have to be very focused about what's going on, and if you make one mistake, then like that can change the entire duration of one game of Dead by Daylight, right? As opposed to Souls, you can kind of go at your own pace. It's a single player game, and if you don't want to, I don't know, move on to the next thing, you just wait, talk to chat, and go on to do whatever. Unless you're in a boss fight, but even if you're in a boss fight, well, if you've played enough of the game and if you've, I guess, gathered that much experience, like the rhythms of that boss fight enough to look at chat between attacks, or look at chat between whatever, between rolls or something, and respond while you're you know focusing on fighting a boss. So two totally different things, and the biggest thing I would say is dbd is much faster, I'd say.
Sorry, just to focus down just once more. So, has that meant having to take those breaks to respond to chat more, as or is it commentating a lot more on the gameplay as opposed to answering chats?
No, I think I understand what you're saying. Explaining what you're doing in DBD is, I think, is a lot more important than really explaining what you're doing with Souls. Especially since my audience is more Souls oriented, so they may not know what's going through my head, what's going on, and I can explain a lot of things that's happening. But that so doesn't mean that you shouldn't be like reading chat as much as you do when you're playing Souls, because well, you're still the streamer. And I think again that's something I have to work on, because you can respond to chat. If you watch Otz Darva, another guy who went from Souls to DVD, he can respond to chat all the time, and he has, you know, 10K people watching him, right? And it proves that streaming is not just hitting the live or hitting the start streaming button and playing a video game. You can get better at it, and in this avenue, like you can definitely get better by streaming different things, that aren't Souls, or that streaming different things that isn't just your main thing.
If there's one aspect you could improve about Twitch, let's say, what would it be? Or the live streaming in general, if that makes it easier. But Twitch if it's easier.
Live streaming in general is there one thing that I would change. That's a question. If I had to change one thing, that's tough. I don't think I have one specific thing that I would change. It may come to me, or like after this conversation, I might think, oh, I should have said that. But man, I think that the live stream space is very, very new. I'll say that, and a lot of the things that say, as opposed to YouTube where you upload videos or something, or TikTok or whatever. The live stream space is very new, so a lot of the kinks haven't really been found out very much. And a huge thing that you'll hear on Twitch, on YouTube, on at any live streaming services, it's very, very hard to find people, and discoverability is a huge thing. So that would be something. I don't really have a solution for it, because, like I said, live streaming is relatively new, but that'd be a very interesting thing to see if that can ever change in the future, like being able to find people more easily. And you can kind of see things like that happening on Twitch. I'm not sure about YouTube. I hear YouTube doesn't even have like a browse section where you can see every stream, which is interesting. But like with Twitch, you have all these tags that you can do. You can set your game, and people can go to the directory, they can look at for you and whatever, and you can rate other people, so to expose your audience to someone else that you know. And I think that's actually one of the biggest parts of discoverability on Twitch is raids, right? And I think that shouldn't be the case. I think people should be able to somehow find people even when they're not streaming.
Yeah, there's. I'm interested in YouTube because I follow the guy who's the head of the YouTube gaming space, and one thing he was talking about to do with the live streaming aspects of YouTube gaming, which I'd be interested if ever comes to fruition, is a more so the way that Twitch works in terms of not including the recommended section, in terms of general discoverability is the game categories, and then it's done by viewer numbers normally, so highest to lowest. For the YouTube gaming, apparently they're looking into trying to do it on a more algorithmic based recommendation system, such as VOD recommendations, so live streams that would be recommended to people who might be interested, which is a lot more difficult, I imagine, with live streaming, as it's just on the go content.
Yeah.
That's something I'm interested in, as well as what Twitch have got coming down the line. Although the last couple of things that have come out of Twitch have not been the biggest fan of, like the boost system and a couple of other things.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that they're trying to throw at the wall. I feel, see what sticks, and I think you'll see that a lot with just, I don't know, with every kind of platform, because I know recently YouTube said, we're getting rid of the dislike public feature, right? And I'm sure that would probably uh, really. I know that upset a lot of people, and I'm not sure what other things YouTube will do. I'm sure YouTube will do a lot of great things in the future to improve. I'm sure Twitch will do a lot of great things, but they have to stumble along the way to really understand what's happening, and how to improve the platforms that they have.
Going into Team Hitless, you mentioned that it was 6 months, I believe, if I remember right, from completing your first run to signing up or becoming a part. Could you mention what was the trigger to then first get then involved with Team Hitless and to the current point as well, which I believe you are a Team Hitless moderator. So how that then led into one led to another, so to speak.
Well, I think when I first got the run, I did because God, Hitless has changed so much ever since 2018. But in 2019, when I got the run, back then you had to message Skolakilla. He was the leader of Team Hitless. He was the owner on Twitch, all that jazz, and pretty much like there were no real concrete rules. You just if Squilla thought you should be on the team, like you were on the team, right? So I messaged Squilla like, hey, like I got this run, like can I be a part of Team Hitless? He's a busy guy, and I don't even think he saw that message. So I'm like, okay, I mean, I'm going away for school for about 6 months. I'm not really going to worry about it because whatever. And then I came back. I'm like, oh, I mean, I want to get back into this. So I got in contact with Squilla, or maybe it was Goes on Ghost, one of the two, and then I got added to Team Hitless, and then and back then there wasn't even a Discord when I got on the Team Hitless. There wasn't a Team Hitless Discord. It was just I think a Discord that Squilla made that you can just submit runs onto, and then Squilla would he would check through it. All right, you're on the team, and then we made a more community-based Discord. I think the founders of that were like Eden Issue, Kazoodle, uh, those guys, and Ghost as well. After that happened, after that Discord was created, or the server was created, then like the community had like a place to actually go and talk about strats, to talk about specific games, to talk about I don't know general Twitch things or hitless stuff or whatever. And I found an opportunity to really get involved with the community when that happened, because when I came back to streaming, it was COVID quarantine. I wasn't going out anywhere. I just had to be indoors. So that's what I was doing. I was interacting with a lot of people. I was focusing on my runs. I was doing a lot of things, and I guess to becoming a Team Hitless moderator, I guess I just became kind of a known member of the community, and people saw me as being very knowledgeable. I don't know in how things worked on Twitch or within Hitless, and I was active in the Discord, and I don't know. I became a moderator. I was asked if I wanted to. I was like, yeah, sure, why not? And then even since becoming a moderator, the Team Hitless has grown so much. I mean, we have a Twitch channel now. Like I didn't think that was going to happen, and we've hosted events on there, and they've been very fun, very successful too. And it's a wild ride, because I don't think anyone would have ever expected Team Atlas to get to this point. It was once just a team that like 10 people were on back in 2018. And now there's
Several hundred at least.
like yeah, a whole lot more.
That's not
Hundreds
even
and hundreds and
including
hundreds of
the
more. So
discords, which made up of thousands of members who may just be interested and not necessarily are runners, but just interested in challenge running space.
yeah, there's thousands of people in the Team Hitless Discord. There's thousands of people in the Hitless Spanish Discord. There's a German server. There's an Italian server. There's a Hungarian server. There's all these communities who are getting together. And I don't know. It's amazing how far it's come.
Speaking of events, so you mentioned Team Hitless on the official channel now as setting up events. How have you found participating in those events? And I know you've previously participated in one from with McRaptor as well, a little while ago, in Deathless race. Does these tournament style events something that appeals to you? You enjoy doing?
Yeah. Actually, I like them quite a bit, because it really it's a time to I feel just to have fun, and I think it's a time for people in chat to have fun, and it kind of acts as a hub for the community to go to one stream, and to go to one chat, even to interact with everyone. And it's really cool. I think the more fun and more interesting tournaments for me are ones where the hitless runners are challenged in different ways. kind of like I think No Hit Jerome popularized this kind of tournament, but when he started the Wheel of Pog back in 2019, that was a hitless tournament, but there were different things that you either had to do or different restrictions that were put on you, right? And I think those types of things are really fun because it's different, right? And it can show the flexibility of runners a lot better than just having a no-hit tournament or having a race of some sort. I think events like that, and we also have a charity event coming up right now, and you're allowed to do anything in that tournament, right? Like or in that race, like if you wanted to do sorcery, you can do that. If you want to do straight sword hilt, which I might do. Like you could do that. Like like these events can also expose people to different ways to do no hit runs. And I think that should always be the goal of the community, is to just get as many eyes on the community and get as many eyes on the different runs that are possible.
I think a big example of that is the sort of expansion of Team Hitless from the original From Software games to now include Hollow Knight, Resident Evil, Cuphead, the latest being Hades, at least at the point of recording,
Hmm.
which has brought obviously different other like niche communities all under or together, which then cross contaminate and go, oh, what's Cuphead doing, or what's Hollow Knight doing, or stuff like that.
Yeah. It's very interesting going from because I guess I'm kind of desensitized as to what is well, I'm desensitized as to what other people may think is just absolutely amazing in a no hit sense of the Souls runs. And then when I go over to a different game like Cuphead, like Hades, it's like these guys are amazing. That's the magic of seeing something that it looks so difficult, but since like you've been around one game for a long time, like you understand what's going on, so the magic might be lost. But with Cuphead specifically, for me, it's a lot flashier, there's a lot more going on, and it's like, wow, like you can do that. you know it's amazing.
If you could give one piece of advice for a new no hit runner, what would that advice be?
To clarify, is is this person like thinking about doing hitless, or have they been doing hitless for a little while and they want some advice on how to move forward?
Your preference. uh, we,
So I think if someone's like thinking about doing hitless and they may have some kind of worry about it, I say do a run. Doesn't you don't even have to have strats. You don't have to know what you're doing at all. You can take 10,000 hits. I don't care. You should do a run, count your hits, and learn from them. And you'll slowly but surely get more comfortable and better with whatever route you're taking, and you'll understand the game a lot more, and you'll learn more, and then you'll learn about like what you don't know, right? You'll know more about what you don't know, so that you can be able to ask certain questions and clarifying questions, right? And and if you are not in the Team Hitless Discord server, I would say join that, because there are a lot of very, very knowledgeable people there who are willing to help. And I think people should always ask questions. Like, never be afraid to ask a dumb question as it pertains to Hitless, because there is no dumb question. If you don't know something, you should get the answer to what you don't know.
yeah, but definitely second that. Especially considering I think I've asked the exact same question on ROM for Bloodborne 3 times in like the space of like 6 months because I kept going back to
Hmm.
it. So people will always be responding even if you repeat it yourself like I did. But yeah, tons of knowledgeable people who are happy to help and give uh, advice from some of their huge amount of hours and experience. If one game could be released tomorrow, either an announced, unannounced, or a sequel to a game you don't think will ever exist, what game would it be?
Oh wow! If one game were announced tomorrow, oh man, I would probably say, I would probably say either whatever the next Final Fantasy game would be, or whatever the next Kingdom Hearts game would be. Those two franchises are ones that I played abundantly as a child, and I would love to, I don't know, to go more into those worlds and see what the different stories come out to be.
There's very large mental aspects of doing challenge runs, whether that lowering a PB, getting the hitless run, um, could you describe a time when a run was taking its toll and how you got past it?
I would say I would probably say for the very first run that I did because like I said there were times where I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have even PB'd for 2 months at a time. And I kind of realized when I was doing that run that you're not going to get the run by feeling sorry for yourself. And you're not going to get the run by not trying to improve on what you did incorrect. And by doing such a weird and difficult run at first, I realized like, okay, you can get angry, you can get upset, you can whine about something that happened in the game, but you got to forget about it and you have to learn from it. It's kind of like I had a friend in high school who was a golfer, and he says Tiger Woods, what he does if he misses a shot, it's 1, 2, 3, forget. And that's what I kind of relearned doing that run was you cannot feel sorry for yourself. You have to just keep on improving, right? If you want the run, get the run.
If I said most hyped or celebrated moment on stream, your stream, what would it be? Or what moment would come to mind?
Most hyped when I oh there's it's one of two. It's either when I got my straight sword hilt all bosses
Which
run.
one? This one.
Actually no, it's that one. Straight sword hilt all bosses in DS1. I think I'd been going for the run at like 5 months at that point or something, and like that run was my baby, dude. Like I had a lot of emotional investment in that, and when I killed Gwen, it was I felt on top of the world. I think like chat was going crazy. It was ridiculous. Yeah, I would say that because at the end of a lot of my runs, I play I don't know some kind of song for the last boss, and whenever the song ends, it's just yeah, you feel on top of the world, or at least I do, and I hope people in chat do too.
And my final question is, what's in the future plans of that cool black dude?
The future plans, keep on doing good runs. I always want to challenge myself. I'll obviously be looking to see how Elden Ring pans out, if slash when it ever does come out. Copium. And in terms of specific runs, not gonna say. I feel like the mystery beyond future runs is really good because I don't want any expectations to be placed upon me. Like I don't want people to be like, "Oh, you said you would do this." I'm like, yeah, but we're doing this now." So I think we'll wait and see.
Yeah, that's no, it's all. I've done that several times when I've gone, oh, next week we're gonna do this, and then something else has caught my eye, and just like, I want to do this actually.
Yep,
uh,
exactly.
and if people wanted to check you out, where would they be looking?
Oh, well, you can catch me live on twitch.tv/ThatCoolBlackDude. You can check out my documented runs on YouTube at ThatCoolBlackDude as well, and on Twitter at CBD_TTV. That's where you can catch me.
Great. I really appreciate taking the time out for this, CBD. I've enjoyed this conversation immensely. I hope you've enjoyed it as well, man.
Yeah, no problem, dude. This was really good.
And I hope everyone listening has enjoyed it as well. And hope everyone has a great remainder of their day, even in the morning, depending on the time zone. And we'll catch you in the next episode.
Yeah, see ya.
If you enjoyed the conversation and want to hear more with amazing guests, be sure to head over to youtube.com/WayOfLoci, Loki spelled with a C, or wayofloki.com/nohitpodcast.